So it's great that we can now add items to our inventory, but let's make it so we can view it in our inventory widget. Because as I showed you last time, even though we are adding it by pressing 1, it does not show up in our widget. So in the BPC inventory, actually, let's clean this up a bit. Give me 1 second. Okay, much better. So let's open up our BPC inventory. So if you go to Blueprints, Blueprint Components, BPC Inventory, we need a new function. And this will be called Get Item Data at Index. So it needs an input called index. Oops. And it'll be of type integer. The point of this function here is to get, obviously, as the name of it describes, the item data based off a certain index of our inventory slots. So we want to basically just get our inventory slots, find a slot at this index, and get the data from that slot. So let's create 2 outputs. And it'll be the item and the amount, which is the data we are looking for. Amount will be integer, item will be inventory BP inventory item master class reference. So let's pull that over. Let's get our inventory slots here, and we will get a copy, and we will get it from the index of our input. So now this outputs an array element at this index. So we just need to break it and plug in our item to our item and our amount to our amount. So pretty simple function here. Let's also make the function pure so we don't have to run the execution node, and compile and save. So we need another function, and we're going to call this update inventory slot. And this is for updating the inventory slot widget so we can actually see the name and the icon, etc. So let's add input for index of type integer, so we know which index slot to update. And we want to get the player controller, and we want to cast to HD player controller. Right click, convert to pure cast, and we want to get that inventory menu reference we made in the begin play. If you don't remember, we can go into our game PB, HD player controller, and go to begin play, and when we created our menu ref, we created our widget, we created a reference. So we want to get that reference. And from our inventory menu, we want to get the inventory grid. So in our inventory menu, we have our inventory grid inside here. And since it is a variable, we can access it from this inventory menu ref. So we'll get inventory grid. And from our grid, we want to get our slots array. Now, if you don't remember, we created our slots array when we generated each inventory slot, and we added it to this variable slots array. I'm just going to open this up too. So we have each inventory slot. We create one a certain amount of times. For us, it's 8 based on the player controller, and we add it to this variable. So from this slots array, we want to get a copy to choose which slot we want to update, and the index will come from this index. Now from this, we want to call a function to update the slot, but we have not created that function yet, so we'll have to do it now. So if we go into our W inventory slot, then our graph, we can create a function, and we'll call this update slot. And just so before we forget, we can go back into our inventory and we can just call it right now. Update slot, and plug it in. We're getting an error. That's just because we didn't compile this first. So we just compile that and then compile this, and it's all fixed. So let's add this to our add item function, because every time we add an item, we want to update the slot. So obviously we only want to update it if we successfully added it to our inventory. So let's just put this right after setting the array element. And the index will be our local index that we set right here for checking for the empty slot. So now when we pick up an item and we successfully add it to our inventory, the widget will be updated as well. So let's actually do something with our update slot in our W inventory slot. And in this slot, we need to call BPC inventories get item data at index. So to do that, in our event graph, let's create a custom event, and we'll call this initialize. And in it, we just need to cast to the L1 character get player character, and we just create a reference by promoting this to a variable, and we'll call it player ref. So in update slot, we can now grab our player ref, and we'll get our BPC inventory, and in that we have our function get item data index. There are no execution nodes because we made it pure. The index input will be our variable index that we set in our inventory grid. Remember, this index goes right in here, so they all have a unique index. And for now, the only thing we can update is the icon. Change it from an empty icon to whatever icon is set per item. So we want to get the slot image, and we want to set brush from texture, plug it in, and we'll just get class defaults from our item again. We can either break this or split the struct pin. Essentially does the same thing. And here we have our item data icon, and we can plug that into texture. We also want to check match size, and that way no matter what the size of the icon is, it will scale to fit the size of our image right here, which we have set to 120 by 120. We need to call our initialize function for all of our slots in our inventory menu. So on construct, we can create a for loop. That'll be a for each loop, and it'll come from our inventory grid slots array, which is all our slots that were created. And in our loop body, we just want to call our initialize function. So all of our slots inside our grid get initialized. So now we can test to see if it works. So we'll hit play. All of these should have been initialized now, which just means they have our player reference set. And when we pick up an item, now when I open my menu, the first icon should change to that little green face, which it has. It also knows that the name is flashlight, battery, and stuff. We just don't have any current way to show that. Pick up these batteries. The second one should also turn to the green face. Great. Let's create another pickup actor and inventory item to make sure it works with multiple items. So let's go into content, blueprints, actors, inventory, and let's duplicate the BP inventory item flashlight battery. And instead of flashlight battery, we'll call this door key. And we can open it up, and we could just change the data. We'll call it door key. The icon, we can give it this little red one here if we want. And max stack amount, I don't know, do 16, or let's do 1. We also need a pickup actor for the door key. So in pickup actors, we can duplicate this one, and we'll just call it door key. And let's open the full blueprint editor into viewport. And let's, for now, we can just make this a sphere. Let's see, editor sphere? No, it's way too big. Sphere. Can do this one maybe. It's also pretty big. There we go. And we'll just have to change the item to dorky, and the amount, we'll leave it at 1. Come out and save. And let's just delete this second flashlight. We could keep it there. We'll just add in our door key here. And now let's test it out, see if we can add a second item. So let's grab our flashlight battery, and we've added our flashlight battery to our inventory. And let's grab our door key, and now we have a door key. So we can now add multiple items to our inventory.